to another exciting episode of Career Success, where we bring you stories of individuals who are making waves in their fields and creating lasting impact in their communities. This is the Achievement Channel, and we are reaching you from our studios, School of Eloquence here in Lagos. I am Oyin Priye Kurumale. Today we have a special guest who has not only transformed the digital landscape in Africa, but has also become a global leader in tech advocacy, digital inclusion, and internet governance. Joining us today is none other than Gbenga Sesan, the Executive Director of Paradigm Initiative, an organization that connects underserved young Africans with digital opportunities and champions the protection of online rights with a footprint across more than 27 African countries. Gbenga's incredible journey began with a degree in electronic and electrical engineering from Obafemi Awolowo University. Over the years, he has expanded his influence globally, taking on leadership roles in tech policy making, speaking of issues of internet freedom, digital inclusion, and emerging technologies. He's attended executive education programs at prestigious institutions such as Harvard, Oxford, Lagos Business School, and more, cementing his role as a tech thought leader. He's also a member of the United Nations Secretary General's inaugural Internet Governance Forum Leadership Panel and has consulted for world-leading institutions like Microsoft, the United Nations, and the World Economic Forum. His commitment to empowering young Africans through technology is truly unparalleled. We are thrilled to have him here with us in the studio. Gbenga Sesan, welcome to Career Success.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
You know, I told you before the beginning of the program that your profile, I read it off screen and I'm like, wow. And I still needed to give this to one of my colleagues to actually prune down so we don't spend all the 30 minutes of the program reading. Welcome once again to Career Success. Yes. First of all, please paint a picture. Before I go into that, let me say great effect to you.
Great.
Articulate effect.
Okay.
So please paint a picture. Paint a picture of your early beginning.
Yes.
Your primary, secondary, university.
Okay. I don't get to talk about my nursery school a lot. So I went to nursery school
Oh,
for 1 year.
did?
Yeah, almost a nursery and primary school in Akure. I was born to a teacher and a nurse. And anyone who's had a teacher as a dad will understand, the implications of that for your study and even for the principles you believe in life. And also, my mom being a nurse, a senior sister who traveled around the world and helped, with impact across the length and breadth of Nigeria. So I grew up not just exposed to education and the impact of it, but also to social value and to social good. And I think that somehow, I thought I was going to study medicine in school. I thought I was getting that side of my mom, but what I was really getting was more of the social impact for myself and my dad. I mean, my dad, I would go on the streets in Accra and I'll meet someone random who's either been disciplined or has been, tutored by my dad before.
Okay.
Or, I'll be in my mom's office and I'll be listening to stories, people thanking her for helping to save the lives of their children. And I'm like, wow, and all that. So I went to nursery school and I went to, St. Peter's Demonstration Primary School in Accra. For 6 years before going to Federal Government College in Doani. And I think it was in Doani that obviously in secondary school you start thinking, I'm doing sciences, I'm doing this. I thought I was going to do, because everybody called me doctor in my class. My mom is a nurse and all our friends were like, doctor, but they're doctor. But I realized that I loved blowing things up in the house. I'll connect the anger to a cable and plug it in and it will spark. And I knew so somehow.
And you are excited.
Oh, it was very exciting. it was great to see things spark. It's boring when you plug in something in the video, it plays and you watch and you sleep off. But when something sparks, that's it. And so I sort of started talking to people and I realized that this was engineering. I didn't know what area of engineering. Then I met a senior in secondary school, Kwayemi Olugasa, who was, in fact, it was in my primary school. He was a senior prefect for me. I became senior prefect after him, and then we were together in secondary school. He was a senior a year ahead of me, and he talked about electric, and I was like, okay, fine. I mean, this looks good. What do they need? Physics, chemistry, maths, English. Okay, that's fine. And I also didn't like blood. I mean, we did some experiments in the lab, and I think I was going to throw up. And I felt very faint seeing blood, so it was very obvious that medicine was not my path, but it was engineering. So I got into IFE, studied engineering, and along the line, I mean, it was my second year in IFE, this was in 1996, that we got this huge computers connected to the internet on campus, and I got attracted to those computers. School was shut down, by the way, for I think about 6 months, and that period I didn't go home. I wrote a letter to my dad through my friend Payo to give the letter to my dad to say, sorry, I'm not coming home. I know you want me to come home to wash the car, OD 1822, and to fetch water, but allow me to stay back. You'll be proud of me in the future. Letters to my dad, and make sure that I didn't go myself, because if I had gone home to say that I want to go back to school, according to Ife, he would say, just hold on, just wait, wait. But I knew that I needed that phase in my life to prepare for the future. I wasn't sure what it was exactly, but don't forget that to use a computer room, I had to sign up for 30 minutes. So I'll write Gbenga Sesan, 30 minutes. I'll come back, change the name to Gbenga Olanina, which is my dad's surname, so that they won't think it's the same person. It was all my names. BC, my middle name, and my dad's middle name, to just get many slots. But this time, everybody was off campus. So it was myself, Deolu, Ashaye, and Titi Akinsomi. And we were on campus. So I would go to this place. The 20 computers would be calling my name. Gbenga, come and use me. Gbenga, come and use me. So I decided I was going to stay back on campus. And to be honest, I think that was when I laid the foundation for my career. Because there was no distraction. I mean, I didn't have money, I didn't have a lot of food, but I didn't die. I mean, growing up as a Christian at that time myself, there was one very simple solution for me. I fasted every day. For that 1 year, I was fasting because it meant I had to eat 1 meal a day. So I thought it was good for me spiritually. It was good for me physically. I didn't have enough money to eat 3 meals. And also the fact that, you eat one solid meal of beans and gari that is concentrated, and you will not think of food again. And drink water, but that period laid a foundation for me. And then when I went for my industrial attachment, I met Dr. James Shotomi of blessed memory, who got me to work with him for my industrial attachment in my 4th year, and then introduced me to web design. So building on my knowledge of computers with web design, it was just almost certain that I was going to focus. In fact, when I was going back to campus, I made up my mind what my project topic was going to be. I wasn't going to wait for any lecturer. In fact, I suggested to the lecturers that I was going to have a project topic, and most of the people I talked to were like, no, you have to go and pick from the list. I'm like, no. This list, solenoids, control, these are past projects. These are projects, power supply. I thought Nigeria would solve the power supply problem very quickly. So I was like, no, forget it. Let me look into the future, e-commerce and things like that. So I did it.
As far as back then, you were looking at
1999, yes.
E-commerce.
My project topic was e-commerce, e-registration. So it was supposed to combine e-commerce with student registration. And it was, by the way, it was my final year project. My supervisor, Professor Kulekende, wonderful man, said to me, Gbenga, this thing is futuristic. Document it well. So I put it on a CD and gave it to him, and I left a copy with the school. Many years later, I met him and he was like, well, they've implemented your project. Not just on, in every school now does e-registration. I was like, okay. Does that mean I'm a pioneer?
You pioneered it.
I wouldn't say I pioneered it because many people were thinking of it at the same time, but it was my final year project. The one thing that was different was that I think most people were thinking of it as a business, but I thought it was a student research because I'm the student. I'm the one who knows exactly how painful it is to register physically, to go to the health center for registration and they tell you, oh, come tomorrow. Why is there no queuing system? Why is there no online platform that allows me to do this? So that's what I did for my final year project, which, by the way, got me into trouble. One of my co-supervisors said it was not very elect, that it was too computing related. So if I want to do it, I should go to the computer science department, and he didn't give me good grades, to be honest. But it was fine because it was my future. I wasn't exactly concerned about I wanted an A, of course, in my final year project, but I was more concerned about, okay, so what happens after the project? After the project, I had to look for a job. It is not that professor that would look for a job. He was a doctor at the time. It wasn't a doctor that would look for a job. It was me. And thankfully, Professor Kule Kende was 100% behind it. In fact, when my colleagues were presenting to him for the first time, those who were also being supervised by him, I was presenting at the Information Technology Association of Nigeria Expo 1999.
As an elect
As
student.
a final year student in 2000, I went to Abuja. I was invited by Chris Waji, who was president of ITAN at the time, to come and present what, to be honest, I hadn't finished writing the project. It was my first presentation, but I remember the title was E-commerce, Nigeria, and the Next Generation.
That was quite topical, given then the time it came that you were actually, so I actually wanted to leave with a pioneer, but you said a lot of people were thinking around it. And for the fact that it is not coming from a student from computer science, it's coming from an elect.
Yes.
What do you think the young people in this generation can learn from that story?
I think it's very straightforward. What you do in school determines your future. You can cram, pass, and forget, and graduate and say there are no jobs, or you can choose to do something meaningful and build on it. By the way, when I went to make that presentation in Abuja, Expo, I think it was, I don't remember if it was December, so my project partner, Bumisha Wande, went with me to go and make the presentation because it was a big deal. Like, oh wow, you guys are final year students and you're presenting your project to the entire nation. And it was at that meeting that a man by the name Larry Olosoya listened to me and was like, okay, who is this? He was working at Microsoft at the time. He then mentioned me to Semisani at Junior Achievement. Oh, by the way, I heard this guy speaking about e-commerce Nigeria Next Generation. It sounds like a very smart student. And Semi at that time was the founder of Junior Achievement Nigeria. She brought Junior Achievement to Nigeria. And they were looking for a young person to represent Nigeria at an IT competition. Perfect. And that is it for students. You need, as young people, you need to realize that luck is real. But luck is only when preparation leads to opportunities. Everybody will complain around you. But if you are ready to invest, and like I said, I mean, there was spending a lot of time in school when everybody chose to go home. And I'm not saying don't go home, but how, my dad already told me when I got into school, and listen, I don't know anybody anywhere. Just go and study, and when you finish, whatever you get is what you get. There are people who have uncles and aunties to help them, no big deal. We're dancing to the sound of different drums. The drum I was dancing to was desperation. There is no future help coming from anywhere.
Okay.
So I better do it, by myself and look for, mentors and others. So my advice to any young person is don't think that school is just let's pass time, cram, pass and forget and graduate with a first class or 2-1 or 2-2. School is the foundation. That's why at the end of the day, most of your friends as an adult are people you met on campus.
Okay, now I need you to address something because of what you just said. School, it's what you put in, that's what you get.
Yes.
Now, there are some social influencers, or let's say musicians. You've heard of the what I call it, action, quote unquote, school NASCAR. You've heard of it?
Oh yeah.
Do you think that's true?
Oh, it's true.
It's
true and it's false.
Please, okay. Now let me hear that.
It's true
because we need
because
to use it as a tool to bring people out. Some young people don't want to go to school.
Oh yeah. And they have many reasons to not want to go to school. Because to be honest, if you look around, start from politicians to other role models. Did they get that from school? We're in Nigeria where unfortunately we have a status-based economy that doesn't talk about process, but only talks about outcome. And justifies the means. But the problem is it's never sustainable. Politicians will lose elections. People who get opportunities through things that don't build on processes, they'll lose favor. Perfect example, musicians, footballers and all that, who decided, you know what, school is not for me. When they get to the peak of their career, what did they do? Look at someone like Shegun Odegbami, for example. They call him the mathematician for a reason. Because even though his football days were over, he could come back to do things based on what he studied in school and intelligence that came with that. So school is a scam in a way because it is possible for you to go through school and not get anything. But school no be scam. And I'm an example of that. And there are tons of people around the world who are examples of that. That if you go to school, what you're doing is you're picking knowledge that when people who have opportunities finish expiring or expending all their opportunities, your knowledge, if they throw you in the desert, you use it to create more than what they had in their glory days. Which is where process matters. I was just talking to a few young people on Saturday, and I was saying to them that Everybody sees the butterfly and we get excited. But what we don't realize, what we don't remember is that in biology we read about egg, larva, pupa, and then the cocoon. And that process is what gives the wings of the butterfly the strength to fly. It's the same thing with every training process. It is possible for you to arrive suddenly. Of course, I mean, you can, if you want to do your move and get arrested and get thrown into jail, you can do it. If you want to become a politician and steal, and one day God help you, that they catch you, it's okay. But there is the option of doing it right. There is the option of saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 before you get to 8. And with that option, nobody can send you to jail for your knowledge. It's not corruption. Nobody can suddenly say, oh, I don't like your face again. You're no longer in this appointed position. In fact, if they fire you, you go back, you dig into that knowledge. It is what you have eaten. It is what you have studied. It is what you have built as a process that helps you to fly.
Okay.
Someone asked me one day, said, oh, Gbenga, you be part of initiative into a big organization.
In fact, that is where I'm coming. That's where I'm coming. So I don't want you to...
Okay.
So it's time for a break. We want to break. And when we return, we're going to be asking Gbenga Sesan how Paradigm Initiative came about. And this thing about electronic governance, I did a course like that in school, but we are going to wait for Gbenga to unleash all of that after this break. To stay with us.
School of Eloquence, our primary focus is on the art of public speaking because it's a major problem. And public speaking, we must understand, is the raw art of speaker to audience oral communication.
I got a lot more than I actually expected. I have overcome the fears I used to have.
The more you speak, the better you are at speaking.
School of Eloquence is the place you can be, and there's a turnaround. That change you are expecting, you get it.
Welcome back, and many thanks for joining us on the program Career Success. Of course, I'm still in the studio with Gbenga Sesan, and he's been letting out nuggets on how to strengthen your youth while in school, or maybe like an entrepreneur or someone who have great aspirations. Welcome once again to the program.
Thank you so much.
So, Paradigm Initiative.
Yes.
When I was searching for you, it's just easy to get you online. I just went there and contacted Gbenga Sesan. I just came on Gbenga Sesan, Paradigm Initiative Nigeria, PIN. So I started reading. I'm like, I spent time, I read it through. I read it the next day. I came to the office and I just kept reading it rather, because I knew I was going to have this conversation with you. How did it come about?
So it started way back. While I was on campus, two things happened at the same time. So I learned about computers and the internet, and there was also the aspect of Black consciousness, like you know, as an African finding my way in the world. So I started a mailing list called Black Pioneers, and that was supposed to be for me my foray into the future. So it was mostly just for me to send information to people about Black people in the world and how they are pioneers and things like that. That eventually morphed into E-Nigeria. I call it E-Nigeria. E-Nigeria, because I thought then, okay, you know what, let's make Nigeria electronic and let's make it digital. But then the Nigerian government started a project called E-Nigeria. So I then changed the name to the nearest thing that came to my mind at the time, which was about, let's shift the paradigm. And I'm like, okay, paradigm is a good word, and what are we going to do? We're going to be doing some initiatives. Okay, so for Paradigm Initiative, it's called. But this was way back in 2001. So we were not registered, we were not even an organization. It was just a volunteer group of, I had a few friends of mine who would we knew how to use computers.
You
right?
convinced them to join you.
I didn't even have to convince them. They were like-minded people. You know how your friends are like-minded people. I mean, what do I need to tell Titi Akin Somi or Deolu Ashayi or Tokoshi Remi to convince them? They were already, in the spirit, so to speak. We'll spend a weekend to go to a village somewhere in Oyo State, and we'll go and train people on how to use computers. We had a project called Afara, which is bridge
For free.
Yes, for free. Because it was too exciting for us that we had this knowledge and we had to share it. You know, when you've eaten and you have so much energy, you will run when there's sugar. So that was it for us. We honestly didn't think of the commercial side of things too much. We did. I mean, we made money. We converted yearbooks into year CDs for people on campus, and we made money from it. So it was a balance. And I think it was because there was a sense in me that, oh, I'm getting all these opportunities from Nigeria, from this digital opportunity, let me give back. So sometime in 2002, I did a competition and became Nigeria's IT Youth Ambassador. It was not an official ambassador role. It was just the name given by the Executive Cyber School. But because I also got a UN fellowship at the same time.
Okay.
Many people then thought I was a real ambassador, because I remember I would get some countries and they welcome me as an ambassador. And I'm like, okay, I'm not a real ambassador. And I'm trying to tell them, and maybe they thought I was being humble, but it grew a life of its own. Because myself and my friends we now had support, official support from the company, the Executive Cyber School, led by Engineer John Metro. He gave us a bus and would give me money to take transportation to universities across Nigeria. And I did this for 2 years, going across Nigeria, training young people on how to use computers. Zara Baba in Kano, Enugu. I think we must have done at least 12 states, because I wrote about 12 states in my handover report. I handed over to someone called...
12 states, how many universities?
It must have been at least 25 universities, because I know in some states, in Lagos, for example, we did at least 3 or 4
we have
universities.
computer science departments in those universities.
We've always had computer science departments since the 70s. The question is, have we had impact from the graduates of those? And we have. In fact, one of them, Edward Obola, who I handed over to as IT Youth Ambassador, is the one who co-founded Cowrywise, one of those fintech companies now. And the interesting thing was that by 2002, like I said, someone met me at a presentation, introduced me to Junior Achievement. Semi wrote to me and was like, okay, come and visit. I came to visit, and I didn't know they were interviewing me for a job. So it was when I finished my exams that I got an email saying, look, following the series of interviews we had with you. And I'm like, okay, which interviews? Right. But then it was an interview, and I really wanted to spend 1 year with them to do my youth service with them. But 1 year became 6 years, and after 6 years, I decided it was time to expand this vision beyond just the location in Kutemeka where we're in Lagos for the Lagos Digital.
Is that how you entered Microsoft and the United Nations?
So Microsoft was the partner on the Lagos Digital Village project.
Okay.
So that was my first encounter with Microsoft. But then I got to do a few things with them, training with them much later. And for the United Nations, it was mostly in 2001 when I was invited for a meeting. I'd written some things about the future of the internet in Africa, and I was invited for a meeting, and then I went to that meeting. And I think this is a major lesson for everyone. In that meeting, I was a participant. I was not a speaker. I was supposed to attend, collect my per diem or allowance, and go back home. But I refused to do just that. I produced a newsletter every day. I listened to all the sessions, condensed them, produced a newsletter, and released it day 1, day 2, day 3. When I send it, and then when I go back home, I send them a report. The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, I send them a report. This is what we did. These are the recommendations.
They didn't tell you to do that.
They didn't ask me to do it. But guess what? That was the last time I had to ask them to invite me. Every time since then, it was so much that they even asked me to come and serve. At the time, don't forget, how old was I in 2002? I was invited to come and chair, to be the vice chair for the African Technical Advisory Committee at the UN Economic Commission for Africa, because they saw it, that this guy is a dangerous person, he's too passionate, and they needed to use that passion. That led to the World Summit on Information Society and led to many other UN things. But that was why in 2007, I was like, you know what, I need to turn this thing into an institution. I can't just do volunteer things here and there, while also, and to be fair, I was beginning to feel like I was cheating on Junior Achievement, because I was invited for Paradigm Initiative, Nigeria at the time, nice Paradigm Initiative, and I was working full-time at Junior Achievement, and my bosses were wonderful, by the way, all women. And that was great. I introduced me all these things of thinking that some people can do some things and others can do some things. I didn't have that training. I saw men and women doing stuff, and that's what I still believe till tomorrow. The fact that my bosses were great and allowed me, they would say things like, oh, Gbenga, it's okay, go. When you go, Junior Achievement, when you give people your cards, they will see Junior Achievement and it's good branding for us. But I realized it wasn't fair. I was spending 20% of the time, increasingly 40%, at some point almost 60% of my time doing my thing as Gbenga Sesan. And then Junior Achievement was getting less time. So I decided, it was time to go. So I resigned. And then started Paradigm Initiative Nigeria at the time, 2007, we started in Nigeria. We agreed to Nigeria.
Which is Ajegunle?
Ajegunle in Lagos.
Apapa Ajegunle.
Apapa Ajegunle, the one and only Ajegunle, AJ City. That's where we started.
Why Ajegunle?
Because I'd been invited to Ajegunle for training, and it was different. Other places they invite me and ask questions like, "Oh, this computer, does it do the same thing like like a laptop?" In Ajegunle, the questions were different.
Wow.
This thing you have taught us, how do I make money from it? My sister doesn't have money to go to school. How does she go to school? And I thought this was practical. These guys are not playing around. They are not interested in the black box. They want to use it and make impact. So I decided to go back to train 25 people for 4 weeks and make sure they move from not having ever taught the computer to learning how to use it to make money. And then that became 2 years later. I decided, okay, let's do it a bit more. Another 3 years, we just said, you know what, we set up, in 2010, we set up an office, our very first office, 39 Pilot Street, Ajegunle, which in fact is now occupied by one of our trainees.
Because I know those places.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned.
Yeah, Ajegunle.
Ajegunle.
Yes.
No. Okay. Let me ask this question before I move to the next about digital rights and advocacy and e-government. What was pushing you? What was moving you that you couldn't just stay back? Like something was just drawing you on the inside.
I'm very selfish. I like my own space. I like peace of mind. So for me, I realized that I was trying to create a future for myself, for my family, and for my kids, and for my wife, and my girlfriend at the time. But there were challenges. There were questions people were asking and I didn't have answers to. Questions like, why should anyone get arrested for creating something innovative that others don't understand? So I started looking at policy a lot more. And I realized that a lot of countries in Africa were fighting what they didn't understand. Political leaders saw the internet as a threat. Like, oh my God, these young people are gathering online against us. I mean, a few years ago, Twitter was shut down in Nigeria because a president felt insulted and said, they were gathering on Twitter to come and remove video. I mean, that obviously shows his ignorance. But the reality is, I'm too selfish to have all these problems around me and not try to solve it. And I was like, okay, well, let's see what I can do. And I started doing some work. I started doing some writing. I wrote at the time, what was in 2013, I wrote what I called Internet Freedom Declaration for Nigeria.
Okay.
But it didn't stop it. And that morphed into a bill. Then we converted it into a Digital Rights and Freedom Bill.
What's the objective of that?
Objective is to make sure that as we train young people, as they get access to computers, as they get access to the internet, that the online environment is not one where they will be afraid of what they need to do. Yes, there are bad actors that need to be punished for cybercrime and things like that. But if a young person goes online and says, my government is not doing well, they should do better, that is not a crime, that is contribution to democracy, and they should not be punished for it. And that was the motivation behind that, to say, listen, let's do something to make sure that the online environment, we focus more on innovation and not on clampdowns.
Now, I want to know some of the challenges you encountered, because it looks like you don't get the picture like you were just moving, you saw mountains, you just skip over them, you saw challenges, you just wipe them off, and you just move on. What were the challenges that you encountered? Did you ever feel like throwing the towel?
Oh yeah, I actually threw in the towel many times. It's not even like I felt like I did. So when I started Black Pioneers, at some point I realized I was about to fail, and then I just stopped it completely and then focused on my studies. But the reality is that I am a product of challenges, in the sense that every challenge that I decided to tackle led me to what people called success. So for example, when there was a challenge of who's going to prove. So Nigeria had Canon 1 Core, and then JJ Okocha. So there was that year, around 1999, 2000, the lady who won the most beautiful girl in Nigeria, Albani Darego, they were all in the news. And somebody then said, wait a second, it's football and this. Why don't we have a young Nigerian who is also intellectually savvy and that does something digital, so that the world knows that we also have digital promises. That was why they created that competition for who was going to be IT ambassador. It was a big challenge for me. I had no idea if I could win it. I got in there, designed a website, I put it on it. In those times we had diskettes.
Yes.
So I went to buy a CD on Lagos Island. I put the design on a CD. I put the CD in its case. I printed a back cover for it, and I put a seal. Do not break this seal unless authorized, because I've seen Microsoft software, that's the way you do it. So I packaged it. So packaging is also important. So one of the things, some of my biggest challenges, one of my biggest challenges is Nigeria. You know, because you're doing something and someone says, okay, calm down, you're not going to solve all of Nigeria's problems. But the reality is that challenge also presents an opportunity for me, because every time that someone realizes that, oh, you did this in Ajegunle, oh wow, if you can do it in Ajegunle, you can do it, you know, almost anywhere else. And other challenges, including finances, at some point I didn't get money. So I had to go deep into myself, find my skills, and then use those skills to make money, demonstrate what I can do with the money that I put down by myself, and then ask other people, bring resources. Anyway, go, let's do this work together.
I see. Now, what advice do you have for the young Nigerians out there who feel like throwing in the towel many times? You said you did throw in the towel, but it's obviously you went back to pick it up.
Oh yeah, pick the towel every time. So my first advice is always go back to pick the towel. It's fine. You know, if you are tired, take the day off. Just go and sleep. Relax. When your brain is calm, then come back, pick the towel again. And realize that many times, success is on point 9, we give up on point 7. Many times, when you work just a bit harder, meet the right set of people, get introduced in the right set of spaces, you will get closer to success. And what I say to people is that even if you don't achieve success, the way people define success, as long as you know you are learning, you're picking up new skills, maybe worst case scenario, you write about a book about it one day, or you start teaching and you make money from it. But this is not just about money or resources. This is about defining, this is me right now, point A. This is point B, where I would like to be. What do I need to learn to move from A to B? Who are the people I need to meet as mentors, as peers, to get me from point A to B? What are the things I need to stop doing for me to get from point A to B? And in between A and B, when you feel like throwing, throwing in the towel, when you feel like giving up, remind yourself that the destination is point B, and that when you get to point B, there's still point C to go to. And of course, to be honest, every time you get to point B, you rest, you celebrate yourself, others may celebrate you or not, who cares? Then you go to point C. And that journey in itself is a big reward for any young person, because then you can peacefully sit anywhere and say, like the lizard that dropped, that yes, even if nobody else praises me, I have done what I want to do, and I'm not stopped.
Are you satisfied? 1. 2, are you satisfied with the level where you've gotten to, as long as career success is concerned? And if you are, what's the next thing for you?
My answer is always yes and no. Yes, because I look back and I'm like, oh wow, we've come far. But then I look ahead again and I'm like, oh my God, there's so much to do. So for me, yes, I feel, obviously I feel very fulfilled. I love what I do what I love. So I'm lucky. But I also look ahead and I'm like, oh my God, there's a lot. Paradigm Initiative just finished drawing up our next 5-year plan, 2024 to 2028. And that's the next step for me. We've literally covered 28 countries and more across the continent. Now we've seen calls from areas in the global south, from Latin America, from Southeast Asia, asking to have a taste of what we have. And that's the next challenge for me, making Paradigm Initiative not just a Pan-African organization, but a global south organization.
I see. Thank you so much, Gbenga, for your time, for joining us today and sharing your incredible story. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Very much welcome. And that's an inspiring conversation with Gbenga Sesan. So we're all in good hands, leaders at the end of affairs. And that's all for today's episode for Career Success on Achievement Channel. However, I'm going to want to get Mr. Gbenga Sesan's commitment to this. I want to say we didn't get much. As much as I think if we let you go and not invite you back, we'll be losing a lot more. So please, you don't want to give that because of your time.
I'll give the commitment to say let's find a time as long as it's mutually convenient.
Yes, that will be a part 2 of our conversation, and we are going to name it Part 2 Conversation: Career Success with Gbenga Sesan. Until I see you again in another episode, it's Career Success. Have a great day.